The idea of writing an a cappella choral piece in Armenian kind of came about even before we had the texts in mind. Vacha liked my approach to text setting, so he and I spent many hours conversing and just improvising ideas. But from the get-go, he was very keen on me becoming acquainted with Charents. Vacha regards Charents as the most gifted of the Armenian poets, and so that really struck my attention. And so Vacha gave me the complete works of Charents and said, "Here, read these," and I began reading them, and I was drawn instantly to about a dozen poems that struck me as very strong, very virile, very passionate, dramatic, deep, profound, all at the same time. That's the kind of poetry that I tend to be drawn to. And then there were many of his poems that were very interesting, but I wasn't so drawn to in a personal sense. And it turns out that after I shared this with Vacha, he was intrigued by that, because the poems that I selected, 201, were all written when Charents was still a teenager. They were basically his first maturity. And many of the poems for which he's even better known, his mature poems, have a much more political kind of sensibility. And to be honest with you, that's never really turned me on very much as a musician. I'm kind of apolitical myself, and I'm much more interested in human emotion and passion and universal themes. And so these poems that I was very drawn to seemed very universal. Ironically, I was reading them as love poems. And when I sat down with Vacha and shared this with him, he said, no, Ian, these are not love poems. He takes these poems as a kind of coming of age for Charents, in which Charents decided to abandon and throw away the old Apollonian kind of way of living in exchange for a Dionysian embracing of passion and newness. And the metaphor in these poems had to do with fire images, one of Charents' favorite metaphors. And that also drew me, because each of the poems has specific allusions and references to various aspects of fire, from burning fire to smoldering ashes, to ashes that have been moistened by rain, all different kinds of nuances of ash and fire and smoke. And so for Vacha, this was really the fire was a metaphor for the human heart and the Dionysian passions that Charents was very interested in. But it also intrigued me that, going back to what I said earlier, that I like double meanings and multiple levels of understanding things. So here we have these poems that can be read or interpreted as love poems. I thought that still was legitimate. And then there's a deeper underlying meaning that Vacha had teased out. And I'm thinking, both of these things and probably other levels of meaning are in these works, just as in all great poems. And so I decided basically to respond musically to these poems in the manner that they first struck me, basically as passionate expressions of love, emotion, loss, anticipation, etc. And then to allow the deeper meaning that Vacha had discovered to also to be there as well. So Charents is literally thinking about burning his former life and allegiances and assumptions and adopting an entirely new one. So in some respects, this cycle kind of takes us through that entire process. So in the first poem, Charents is basically talking about burning and turning away from the old way. So it's a rather dark and passionate setting. And towards the end of that poem, he talks about seeking light, seeking the new. There's a hint of that. And so at the end of the piece, there's a kind of a transformation into a more hopeful, kind of almost calm. And then the internal poems in the cycle deal with various nuances of this transitional phase of destroying the old and looking forward to the new. The penultimate piece is a very beautiful one. It's basically a soprano solo. Shushik Barsumyan will sing the solo with piano and choral accompaniment. And it basically deals with anticipating the dawn from the standpoint of dark night. So it's a kind of nocturne. And she sings about anticipating the blaze and the coming of day. And so the final song in the poem is this explosive burst of energy in which Charents talks about sacrificing his own heart and allowing it to be reborn as a fiery sun. And so it turns out that some of the words that I had chosen to be repeated were not pronounceable when you say them properly. And it was just my own ignorance of the proper pronunciation of these words that caused me to even imagine repeating them over and over again. So he said, let me try something and see if you like it. And so he went to work with the music that I'd written, and instead of repeating single words, he took entire phrases of the poetry and matched them to what I had done. And he said, what you can do is you can repeat these entire lines. And that turned out to be the secret. And then the thing just kind of took off. But I mention this because the creation of this piece is a true collaboration between two people, neither of which could have created the thing independently, but together we were able to do it. And this is a prime example. If I hadn't known Vache, I couldn't have created this work, and certainly could not have created this last movement, where you have to be intimately familiar with the Armenian language and all the possibilities and accents and the flow of words and the parsing of fragments, etc. And coupled with Vache's deep lifelong experience with music making and composition. I mean, it's a very unique combination of qualities, and so we were able to do this. And the test really is in how native speakers react to it. Does it sound right? Does it somehow work? And I just have to have faith in that. So that's how it came to be.
I'm excited to hear it, especially after all this.